Hello there and welcome to this special episode. Today I want to go over a few things regarding WoW Vanilla with all the current events happening. A lot of people have been asking me like what is my stance, like what am I going to play when Nostalrius and Elysium is going to launch their server. So yeah, here we are. I would like to discuss a few things about racials, about classes, pretty much just a preview of what you can expect and what might be some good combinations of things. Like, for example, like what class race combination is the most efficient one. Keep in mind, this is a bit of an opinion piece, and also in the end, racials, they don't really matter that much. I guess if you are going to min-max, if you are going to be like a perfectionist, then this is something you should take care of and you should keep in mind. But other than that, really just go for that what you want. Go for the kind of race that you like. Same thing regarding classes, by the way. I won't get into that too detailed in this video, but of course there are a bit stronger classes, there are a bit weaker classes in Vanilla. It's always been that way. But just play what you like. You will find your spot, and keep that always in mind, please, if you're watching this video. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Here we go, starting with the humans. Humans are overall really good race in World of Warcraft, PvE and PvP wise. Reason for that, well, let's look into it. We have perception, increasing the stealth detection for 20 seconds. Really amazing against other rogues. Also Fable Druids, maybe some friendly duels against Night Elves, but I guess that can be neglected. And yeah, just overall really nice. You have to keep in mind, Vanilla is probably swamped with rogues, so this gives you an edge. PvP wise, gives you maybe a lead, a start, a jump, and greatly increases your chances of winning a 1v1 fight if you get the initiation against the rogue. So really nice talent there. Then we have the mace and sword specialization. Awesome for PvE. Also, you have to keep in mind especially for warriors and rogues, combat rogues and that. And just a really solid, nice PvE talent. Increases your damage output. You get to your hit cap a bit earlier. You can invest into some more damage heavy abilities, and just a really, really solid and strong racial there. Then we have diplomacy. Gives you also a bit of an edge against non-human players regarding the reputation grind. You get a bit earlier to those precious recipes, to some nice items, and this allows you to get a bit ahead. I mean, really late game it falls off, because by that point probably everyone is exalted, and well, then it becomes kind of useless. But really, like for the first few months when things start out, this is an awesome talent. It gets you ahead, it gets you going, and you also don't have to waste too much time on, well, grinding reputation. So really good talent. Unfortunately, well, becomes useless very late game, but until that point, really strong stuff. Then we have the human spirit. This increases the spirit by 5%. Something that actually can almost be neglected. It's not that great. It sounds really good, and I mean, for priest it's quite amazing. But the thing is, if you are going with a priest on a lion side, you will probably want to go with a dwarf, because priests, they get their own set of abilities. I will cover this probably around the screen here, showcasing them, and maybe go over this when I go to the dwarves. But yeah, they got a really nice ability regarding this, so you might want to roll with a dwarf regarding priests. And well, for other classes it's okay. For warlocks it's okay-ish. For mages, but well, for those kind of options you have the gnomes on the alliance side. So when we come to that, you will see why they are probably the better choice for you. But yeah, so far, like for melee classes, warrior, rogue, some extent also paladins, just a really, really good and probably the cookie cutter race for those kind of classes. So, well, thumbs up for the, okay, that sounds a bit strange, for the human race. But yeah, it's really strong. Also an overall really well balanced out stat build, as you can see here, in case you are not aware of this, but starting like with a different race also grants you different kind of stats. This is late game almost to be neglected. I mean, when we are getting items that almost, well, fulfill those stats you are seeing here right now, then it can really be, well, a bit left behind, I guess. But if you are into this whole min-maxing thing, this might be something to consider. Like the Night Elf, for example, starts out with a lot of agility, and if you're like, for example, rolling as a rogue, and if you are more interested in having maybe 5-6 more agility points overall instead of the sword specialization and the mace specialization, then this might be something you want to look into. But okay, enough about this. Let's jump to the other class race, I mean. Next up we have the dwarves, and dwarves are a pretty beefy, tanky kind of race, and they have a lot of nice options PvP wise. And yeah, we will go over this real quick. We have the gun specialization. This is not PvP, this is more like PvE. If you are looking into getting a hunter, this might be the choice for you. The thing is, there are not really that many guns like late game content, high end rating wise, so you probably won't profit from this kind of talent that much. I think in Ankiraj there's like one weapon that helps you out with that, but besides that you probably won't profit from it. So this is something you have to keep in mind. As you can also see here, this is like what the thing that I meant with this is a bit of a tanky, beefy kind of race. You have the agility really low on dwarves. I mean, I'm a priest here, but still, in the overall stat build, agility is really not that high regarding dwarves. But if it just, I mentioned like really at the start that if you are just more into dwarves than night elves, then just go for it. You will find your spot. It's okay. If you are a hunter, then I don't think anyone later will be like, oh, you are missing like 7-8 agility on your hero that you could have if you went with a night elf. We can't accept you in the guild. And so really just go for what you really prefer as a personal preference. And with that being said, let's move on. We have frost resistance, also quite nice for PvP against mages, of course, frost mages. Also quite okay later on if it goes to next Ramas. If you ever, well, get to that point, then this is actually something that works really out because you don't have to invest too much into the resistance gear or have even more than, well, your teammates. And this makes you, of course, a bit more beefy, a bit more tanky. So also PvE wise, really late game content, quite a nice choice. And as I mentioned, also PvP, it's really okay. Then we have the Find Treasure. Find Treasure is quite okay. The problem with this is, well, if you are going with like a collecting profession, for example, herbalism, mining, then it kind of overrides your searching tool, and you only would be able to like find treasure right now. If I would have gone with herbalism, I couldn't like look for both at the same time. So that's a big issue in my opinion. Also, if you're more of an experienced player, you probably know like the chest spawns where they are, and if you just pay a bit of an attention to your environment, you probably will spot them anyway. So not the best talent, and if you are going with something along the lines of mining, herbalism, then, well, it kind of gets overwritten. So that's something you should consider. Then we have Stormform. Stormform, awesome PvP talent, reduces the damage you take thanks to the armor increase, purges you from poison, bleed, disease. Really, really strong PvP talent. So yeah, this is the way to go for you, I think, if you are a warrior, if you really are into PvP. I mean, the stealth detection from the humans, I noticed this already, is also amazing. But I think Stoneform really pushes you over the edge, especially like against priests. And yeah, really good ability PvP-wise. PvE also quite useful later on. Ankiraj, especially if you are a tank, you have that extra kind of ability that makes you a bit more tanky, that helps you, well, making the life of your healers a bit more easy. And yeah, that being said, really nice choice if you are into tanking. And also for priest, this is a really nice option as well, since you are kind of lacking the increased spirit, like if you would have gone for a human, but you get the fear ward. And what it means is that you get a spell 30-second cooldown, which allows you on yourself or on allied to basically make them immune to one fear effect for a certain amount of time. So instead of you being feared, the fear ward kind of absorbs the effect. It gets dispelled, but you don't get feared. And this is a really, really strong PvP talent. This is why dwarves are so well considered for any kind of PvP action. So if you want to roll with that, then yeah, if you're into PvP, then this is probably your way to go. Okay, moving on to Night Elves. And Night Elves have a pretty nice tanking capability thanks to their quickness, which increases your dodge chance by 1%. So this is actually pretty strong talent for PvE for tanks. Then we have the Shadow Melt. This is more of an PvP kind of well, skill trait. You can't, like as in later expansions, you can't use it in combat, so it's really not as great as later on, where you can basically Shadow Melt, get out of combat, drink something. So keep that in mind. In vanilla, it's really just out of combat, so it allows for some ambushes against other players in the PvP kind of world. But for PvE, it's quite useless, to be honest. Maybe if you are leveling and want to hide and you are not a rogue. It also increases your rogue stealth and your druid stealth if you are feral by a bit, so you are a bit harder to detect, which also for PvP is quite nice. So it does not become like a useless talent or useless trait for rogues or druids. Quite the contrary, it actually increases those kind of abilities, so that's quite nice. Then we have the Wisp Spirit, 50% movement speed increase in death. I mean, for leveling, it's quite nice. You will probably die a bit here and there in vanilla, and also if you get ambushed and really want to go and get back to your game, then this is an okay trait, but also nothing too crazy. You can see from this, I'm not a big fan of the Night Elf racials. I don't have too much to say about them. Nature resistance is quite nice in Ankiraj, maybe against some niche kind of boss fights. Increases your nature resistance by 10, so that's okay-ish. But to be honest, what makes Night Elf kind of cool is their really high agility. We went with a rogue here, that's why it's even a bit higher than, well, if I would have gone with a warrior here. But in general, they have a really strong agility start, and that's something you might want to consider, because this is like a really strong attribute on hunter and rogue. I talked about this before. Later on, I mean, it can be a bit neglected, and well, if you still want to roll with a Night Elf and don't find any real reassurance in the racials, except maybe for the quickness, which is PvE and PvP wise a pretty strong talent, then at least you can reassure yourself that the stats for rogues and hunters are quite nice to start with. Also keep in mind that the Night Elf Priests have a special spell that deals some damage, but it's pretty bad. Like, it's very mana consuming. I will probably have like a short overview here, and does not deal that much damage. So I think it's like star shards, and yeah, it really does not do that much for you. And if you are rolling with a priest and want to go with a priest, then there are other races that are probably a bit better for you. So here we are with the gnomes, one of the, in my opinion at least, stronger races on the alliance side, especially if you are going for some PvP and basically the magic heavy, spell damage heavy classes, then this is probably the way to go for you. Starting out with a really nice base stat in intelligence, getting even better by the expansive mind, which increases all intellect by 5%. This is just amazing because it's not only the mana increase, but also like intellect overall. They changed it later on in later expansions, but in vanilla it's pretty strong. Of course, intellect does not provide you with spell power, so it's not completely broken, but your mana pool increases, of course, and also your crit chance, like a critical spell damage hit. The chance in that is increased. So really good start right away for Warlock, Mage, good stuff. Escape Artist PvP also amazing, allows you to get out of some annoying things like kind of dazzling effects that reduce your movement speed, wing clip, hamstring, those kind of stuff. So the only means basically for a warrior to get really on you, and if you get rid of this, then it's pretty much GG. So awesome PvP talent, even has some merits into PvE, but only in real niche situations, but most of the time a really, really strong talent. Then we have the engineering specialization, engineering skill by 15%. It's a bit like with the reputation increase from humans. It's really nice for the start. It gets you a bit earlier to the finish line, but once you're there, you can't go ahead. So there's like no super secret engineer kind of, recipe or thing you can build with it. It really just stops, and again, really nice for the start, for the early months when some people are still struggling to get those final, really hard-earned engineering points to their 300 cap. Then you are already there and you can build some of the really nice items, but after that it kind of falls off. But until then, really nothing to be laughed at if you are really into that, into that profession. Then, I mean, if you are not even going engineering, then of course this talent just falls flat. But yeah, really nice race overall for mana classes like Warlock and the Mage, because they're also the only ones that can be played as a gnome. No priests, so really good stuff. And we also have the arcane resistance, increases the resistance by 10. This is something it's really not that great. PvP wise, almost nothing that it provides for you, because arcane is a really underplayed and underrepresented kind of damage type, PvE and PvP wise. Maybe if you like fight against the Moonkin, then in some way, but even they use nature damage most of the time, so nothing too spectacular. But I think the rest of the abilities are just super strong. My opinion, Warlock and Mage, the Gnome is just the class to go if you're going with an alliance character, that is. So yeah, that should be it for the alliance side. So let's head over to the Horde. So here we are on the other side, starting off with the rogues, pretty much the counterpart to humans. Maybe even like more dwarves actually, because also orcs are quite bulky, quite tanky, beefy, but but have an overall spread out and nice kind of trait set. Starting off with the command, which is really nice for Hunter and Warlock since it increases the damage of your pets by 5%. So if you are into that kind of classes, then, well, there's always this argument, maybe going Troll Hunter or Orc Hunter. From my experience, in the end, it doesn't matter that much. Just go for what you prefer. Both of those classes, races, combinations, they have their merits, they have their strong and weak points, but you can pretty much not go wrong if you go as an Orc on the Horde side. They have an overall really nice set of abilities. Next one is the Blood Fury. Increases the melee attack powers, so this is actually something you should keep in mind. This is otherwise Orc would be probably the go-to race for hunters, but it only increases the melee attack power, so also makes you a bit vulnerable. Nothing you should probably pick up in crucial moments in PvE fights. Also something you should use carefully in PvP, because the healing you get is reduced by 50%. So keep that in mind. Other than that, and if your healers can afford it, a really nice damage boost for you, and overall pretty good ability. Then we have the X specialization, increases with one-handed and two-handed axes by 5%. Pretty much the same thing I said about the hunter ability, not the hunter, the human ability. With the increased maces and sword skill, you get to your cap earlier, you can invest into more damage, you deal more damage, and really nice specialization for PvE, of course. So yeah, hardiness, that's also a very, very strong PvP trait. Also for PvE, actually, it's quite okay against certain enemies. Increases the chance to resist stun effects by additional 25%. So this is nothing to be laughed at, and makes, I think, at least for me, the Orc the go-to race for warriors. Especially if you're into PvP. Of course, like, I know what a lot of you guys are thinking right now. The undead kind of side of things is maybe a bit better thanks to their Will of the Forsaken. But we will come to that later. But yeah, in general, I would say Orc a really strong race in the game, and overall bulky, strong, beefy, damage heavy, stat build as well. Lesser on the side of intelligence, but yeah, the strength and stamina is really good. So yeah, that should be about it for the Orc. And let's move on to the next one. So here we go with the self-proclaimed PvP master race, the Undead. And it's a really nice, also for the flavor kind of things, I guess. Undeads are just, I mean, they're pretty cool, let's be honest. And well, if you plan to go for a PvP video with Linkin Park music and, well, black and white filter with your Assassin Shadow Stepper 29, then Rogue is probably the class to go for you. But jokes aside, really okay overall kind of builds. Also, the stats are quite balanced on a Rogue, a bit higher on the spirit side of things, and well, that also makes it quite attractive for priests. There are other reasons for that as well, but yeah, Rogue priests are also quite often and probably the way to go for you. But let's not jump ahead. We are going first with the underwater briefing. Yeah, pretty much one of the most useless talents, I would reckon. It's kind of nice in some PvE situations. I mean, I guess most of you would agree with me when I say that underwater levels, underwater encounters are always a bit tedious and can get really frustrating, can get really meh. So having this 300% is actually quite nice in those situations, because at least you don't have to, well, get frustrated or have to fear to well, get exhausted underwater and die that way or take damage that way. So for PvE, it's actually quite nice for some quests, but I think other than that, it can pretty much be neglected. Then we have the Shadow Resistance, also quite nice for Nexramas. Also nice for PvP against Warlocks, Shadow Priests. So that's something that is actually not that bad. 10%, not 10%, 10 increase in Shadow Resistance is actually pretty nice. Then we have Cannibalize. For PvE, quite okay. Spares you some of your downtime in certain situations, although you probably want to eat like high level food anyway, but this saves some money, I guess, and allows you to keep moving a bit faster. But this is actually something you probably won't use that often, to be completely honest. So far not really that crazy racials, not that crazy traits, but here we go. The Will of the Forsaken provides immunity to charm, fear, and sleep while active. May also be used while already afflicted by charm, fear, or sleep. Lasts 5 seconds. So this is a pretty amazing PvP talent. Also PvE wise, you get, like, if you get feared, like in a boss fight, you get faster on the boss again. You can make yourself immune to those kinds of effects, and that's increasing your DPS output by a lot, of course. I shouldn't say a lot, but it increases your DPS output, which is quite nice. So yeah, PvP just, I think, the king of the racials regarding PvP, and well, that's why, like, on the alliance side of things, warlocks are a bit underrepresented. I mean, their only means to maybe get rid of like a rogue or something is to fear them away, to get them away from you, but Will of the Forsaken prevents that pretty much and also makes you immune against those kind of effects. So every 2 minutes you pretty much can't do anything against a class with this. So yeah, really strong PvP talent, also quite okay for PvE, but yeah, this is really something you should consider looking into if you are into kind of PvP, the Undead race. By the way, regarding priest talents, the Undeads get the Devouring Plague, which is an okay damage over time spell, but probably nothing you will use while leveling because it's pretty mana inefficient. But later for PvP it's also pretty strong, so keep that in mind, and yeah, makes choosing a priest for Undying PvP, Shadow Priest, pretty much, well, your way to go. Next up are the Tauren, and Tauren is just a pretty nice race to begin with, just because they are Tauren. Regarding the racials, it's okay. We have the nature resistance, kind of the same with the night elves. 10%, I always say percent, 10 points increased, which is really nice against, well, certain PvP fights, I guess, and most of all like Ankh-Iraj, maybe some niche Sugurub fights, but that's about it. Really nothing too special and something you can probably look over. Then we have Endurance. Now this is something that makes the choice for a PvE warrior in Tauren very attractive, since they start already with some sort of tankiness, beefiness, no pun intended, and what that makes them really a strong consideration regarding, well, tanks in vanilla. So yeah, if you're looking into PvE tank, also for PvP it's quite nice, of course. Some extra health never hurts, but what makes them even better consideration for PvP, I guess, is the War Storm. So with like maximum 5 enemies, 2 seconds stun, really short cast time, like an extra disable, basically, really strong stuff. Charging on an for example, again we are going with the warrior here, charging on an enemy, stunning them, or as a hunter you get charged, you stun your enemy and then run away. So this is really a very strong PvP talent. PvE, there's probably not much you can do with it. I mean, of course, if you're leveling or maybe grinding later on and get into some sticky situations, then stunning, like if you pull too much, stunning them, running away, always a nice option. Just a 2-minute cooldown. So this is actually, I think Warstomp and Endurance make Tauren a pretty good choice, regardless of what kind of class you are going to play, especially regarding PvP. Then we have Cultivation. This can be a bit neglected actually. I mean, early on it's quite nice. Starting out as a herbalist, you can run into some issues sometimes regarding, well, getting off those first few skill points. But later on it just completely falls flat, and it's not like herbalism is like a super hard skill to bring up. Like in comparison, for example, to the Gnome racial, which increased the engineering by 15, this is actually pretty weak, but nice to have, nothing completely worthless. And I think Warstomp and Endurance actually make for a really, really solid choice in the Tauren race regarding Horde. So if you want that extra tankiness, if you want that nice stun in Warstomp, then go for Tauren. Last but not least, we have the Troll, and Troll is probably my favorite class in the game. This is like something I mentioned earlier, just personal preference. But I have to say also the abilities are really nothing to be laughed at. We have Regeneration, which is pretty nice for leveling, allows you to keep an uptime a bit better, nothing too crazy, but also for tanking it's quite nice because 10% of the total health regeneration, well, goes through even in combat, and out of combat it's again increased by 10%. So don't get me wrong, it's like nothing broken, it's actually more of the weak side of racial traits, but it helps out and it's really nothing useless. It's a really solid talent in my opinion. Then we have the bow specialization. Now this is really nice for hunters, of course. And in my opinion, if you are going hunter, then go troll, because trolls also have a pretty nice base agility boost. So for me at least, that's always something to consider. Then we have berserking, which increases your attack speed by 10% if you are like full HP, and it goes all the way to 30% even if you are badly wounded. And this is something, well, that increases the DPS of course and goes a long way, be it like auto attacks as a hunter, be it for a mage like casting your bolts, and also quite nice for priests. I guess I didn't go into too much detail regarding like the priest kind of way on the horde, because there's not too much to talk about there. The troll priests, they get like a debuff which decreases the damage the enemy does, and which also decreases the healing, I think by 20%. So it's a little, well, PvP like counter, decreasing the healing on the enemy target by 20%. That's quite nice, but also nothing too crazy, I would say. So yeah, then we have beast slaying. Damage dealt to beast increased by 5%. Really amazing if you are going for leatherworking and skinning and just want to grind a bit faster. Really helps out. Raiding wise, there are not too many beasts that you will encounter later on, especially not boss wise. Of course there's the beast and I guess you deal 5% more damage to him then, but besides that there's nothing too spectacular. Here and there, especially Sugurub, I think this gets a bit useful, but besides that you can neglect this. But yeah, hey, bow specialization, and I probably should also not forget to mention the throwing specialization. Nothing too crazy, but if you are going as a rogue, then this is a really well, not a must-have, but a nice-to-have. So I should not forget to mention this. For me, maybe I'm a bit like influenced or biased regarding this, but for me, like hunters are really, for me it's rogue. But in the end, DPS wise, you can also go with orc, and again, just go with whatever you want. I mean, it's really up to you, and I kind of want to conclude this again with the statement. It's all about having fun. Never forget this, like, don't get lost in all these kinds of min-maxing kind of strategies, or don't go out of your way just to squeeze that extra percentage DPS and then play a race you don't really enjoy playing or don't enjoy looking at, because stuff like this really goes a long way actually. Also starting areas, all that stuff, it really is something that is also very important. And of course, if your playstyle is going for this completionist kind of playstyle and for this perfectionist kind of way, then, well, be my guest. Go for the best class race combinations. I mentioned a few, at least in my opinion, a few that are really nice. But if you really don't care that much, then feel free to pick whatever you like. I thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this, well, made choices for you a bit easier, gave you a neat little overview about certain things here. And, well, until next time, stay awesome, guys, and bye.